Cine apasă pe record?
Bun, ar trebui să vadă acum, nu? Se vede, e ok? Nu aud pe nimeni să spună nimic. Dacă...
E foarte bine, e foarte bine.
Bine, mulțumesc.
Da, da.
Extraordinar.
Bun, ok. Prezentarea asta e așa într-o fază foarte exploratorie. Aveam senzația că am ceva mai mult de atât, dar se pare că trebuie să mă mai gândesc la niște lucruri și sper că mă puteți ajuta în seara asta. O să prezint în engleză și dacă e ok, și o să iau întrebările în limba română. Poate putem să vorbim în limba română. Mă gândesc că e ok pentru toată lumea. Bun, și so there are two topics I want to bring together. The topic of easy ontology and group agency. What I would like to do is to explore two questions: whether there are group agents and how should we approach the question whether there are group agents. So usually, in our ordinary talk, we say something like the parliament passed some bill regarding deforestation. The parliament did and that, did this and that. Okay, so in a way, we ascribe actions to institutions. We ascribe attitudes, we ascribe intentions. So our ordinary talk seems to imply this kind of group agents. What I would like to do is to approach these two questions from an easy approach to ontology. So the easy approach to ontology is from Thomason's Ontology Made Easy. So there she proposes this kind of reconfiguration of the ontological talk. Well, my question, my enhanced questions are the following. Does an easy easy approach to ontology answer to the question whether there are group agents? Does it trivially answer? Or is this approach to ontology illuminating for the way we should approach the question whether there are group agents? So if it doesn't trivially answer whether there are group agents, at least is it useful in our metaphysical discussion regarding group agents? So I will start with some ontological talks, some talk about the ontological frameworks. And here we have Carnap-Thomason's approach and Quine's approach. I will talk first about Carnap's approach, then Carnap-Thomason approach. Then I will get to why is group agency a problem? Why do we ask this question in social ontology? I will talk about some debates regarding group agency, and then I will try to see whether what are the consequences of an easy approach to ontology regarding those debates. Okay, so we have the two ontological frameworks: the Carnap-Thomason approach to ontology, which is the easy approach, and the pseudo-Quine approach to ontology, which is the difficult approach. So I used here pseudo because maybe not all of you agree with this interpretation of Quine. So that's why I'll refer to it only as pseudo-Quine approach. Okay, what does the Carnap-Thomason approach to ontology says? Well, it discusses what there is. The pseudo-Quine approach to ontology discusses what there really is. Now, if we have a more substantive talk, the pseudo-Quine approach to ontology discusses about rival ontologies, discusses about some standards of ontological standards a theory has to fulfill in order to be accepted. While the Carnap-Thomason approach tries to keep the questions regarding existing questions regarding different entities in the simple level. Okay, my proposal is to forget a bit about the pseudo-Quine approach and try to find what the Carnap-Thomason approach has to offer. What is exactly this Carnap and Thomason approach? Maybe so this is from Carnap's paper, Semantics, Empiricism. So this is from Carnap's approach, Carnap's paper regarding the ontological debates and how we should approach existence questions. So here he says something like the following: to accept the thing world. The thing world is is the world we talk about on a daily basis. So to accept the thing world means nothing more than to accept a certain form of language. In other words, to accept rules for forming statements and for testing, accepting, or rejecting them. The acceptance of the thing language leads, on the basis of observations made, also to the acceptance, belief, and assertion of certain statements. But the thesis of the reality of the thing world cannot be among these statements, because it cannot be formulated in the thing language, or it seems in any other language or theoretical language. Okay, so what's his proposal? His proposal is to accept existence questions, whether, for example, whether they are possible objects, or whether they are propositions, or whether they are properties. And his proposal is to accept existence questions, but as internal questions, internal to a framework. There are also unacceptable existence questions that are external to any framework, and these are the philosopher's questions. For example, an internal question, which is internal to the thing world framework, is whether there's a table on which my laptop sits. So the question has an easy answer. The answer is yes. The unacceptable existence question, which is an external question, is whether there's the table, where the table exists, or the sum of its parts. So this is the philosopher question. Internal existence questions should have a very easy answer. That is, the answer should be provided on conceptual or empirical grounds. My answer that there is a table under my laptop is an empirical answer. Okay, so the basic idea is to deflate ontology and accept only internal existence questions. However, we can ask some external questions, but on external to any linguistic framework, but only on pragmatic grounds. Only when we want to decide whether a certain linguistic framework is better than another one. Okay, so the idea from Ontology Made Easy is to revive this deflationist approach to ontology, Carnap's approach, and to provide in this way a better approach to ontological and existence questions. Okay, so here are some maybe technical and formal aspects of Carnap and Thomason's approach to ontology. The first idea is that exist has an univocal meaning. It doesn't vary at all, and this is linked with the idea that existence should be understood as an existence quantifier or as a predicate. So from this point of view, there is no need to distinguish between the existential quantifier and a separate predicate for existence. We also have, I'm interested more in this features of the Carnap-Thomason's approach. We do not need the so-called criteria for existence, like mind independence or causal efficacy. And existence questions are answerable empirically or conceptually. Now we get to Thomason's approach from her Ontology Made Easy. Well, the idea is that the term exist, our use of exist, of this term, does not refer to a substantive property, the nature of which we can investigate and hope to discover. The idea is to keep it simple and to provide a fixed formal rule for our use of exist. So what this easy and fixed formal rule of exist? Well, her definition is the following. Case exists if and only if the application conditions actually associated with case are fulfilled. Application conditions here should be understood as some rules which are rules of use that are meaning constituting for some terms. This basic rules also tell us when the term refers. So case exists every time that the term K refers, and every time that the term K refers, case exists. Well, the idea would be also that there's some sort of a more liberal approach to existence. So the conditions under which things of different kinds exist will be as various as those application conditions are. So there isn't a general property, or there isn't a general criteria objects have to satisfy in order to say that they exist. Those conditions depend on certain uses of the terms. Okay, so the idea is to go back to the original questions and see whether this easy approach to ontology is in any way useful for the questions where there are group agents. And if it doesn't provide an answer, like a yes or no answer, at least is it useful for the way we should approach the question whether there are group agents? Okay, why do we ask these questions? I started saying that in our ordinary talk, we use terms for institutions, terms for groups, as if those groups and institutions can be endowed with intentionality or attitudes. We also talk about actions of those institutions. So if in our ordinary talk we ascribe attitudes and intentions to this kind of entities, does it mean that we are somehow ontologically committed to this kind of entities? Does it mean that these entities are also group agents? Okay, there is also another argument for talking about group agency, and it has a more roundabout route. So in literature, there's this talk about the symmetry constraint. So if we accept collective action, we also have to accept group agency. So collective action is acceptable only if group agency is acceptable. Accepting collective action, what does it mean? It means that it cannot be reduced to the sum of actions done by individuals. Well, if we have to go back to the pseudo-quine approach, because to this kind of question, whether there are group agents or how should we approach the question, the answer is that the question should be approached as a substantive existence question. So the answer has to be metaphysically meaningful. And here I have a map provided by List and Petit about on the debates regarding group agency. So the idea is the following. But how should we analyze the ascription of attitudes, intentions, or agency to them, that is, to groups? Should we understand it literally, taking it to impute a group agency that replicates the agency of individuals? And if so, should we endorse this imputation or treat it as an error? Or should we understand the language metaphorically or figuratively, taking it to suggest that while groups can simulate agency, they cannot really replicate it? On the latter view, the reference to a group's attitudes, intentions, or agency might serve useful shorthand purposes, but would not have any ontological significance. It will be a mere façon de parler. So the idea is that we have maybe 4 approaches to the question whether there are group agents. So the first approach is that our attribution of attitudes and intention is mistaken, and logical analysis can show this. This is Kirk Ludwig's approach. Another approach would be that our attribution cannot be explained away, but it is just a manner of speaking, and this is Schmidt's proposal. Our ordinary talk about attitudes and intentions of groups should be taken literally, but they cannot be explained away. And this is what List and Petit call reductive realism about group agency. And the last one is List and Petit's approach to group agency, is namely that our talk about attitudes and intentions of groups should be taken literally, and they cannot be explained away. They cannot be reduced to attitudes and intentions of the individuals of the group. Okay, so Ludwig's eliminativist says that accepting group agency and collective actions comes on a par. So logical analysis can explain away collective actions. The collective actions are not actions per se. And if we do not have collective actions, we do not have group agency either. So group agency is explained away as well. Schmidt's eliminativism is that we use sentences like the Romanian parliament passed the law regarding reforestation, but our reference to the singular term, namely the Romanian parliament, cannot be explained away. Moreover, our attribution of a certain action in such cases cannot be explained away either. So there are group agents, but only as a manner of speaking. That is, we have an ontological reducibility, but without having a conceptual reducibility. Now we get to List and Petit's realism. So the idea is that we ascribe attitudes and intentions to groups, and this talk should be taken literally. They cannot be explained away. They cannot be reduced to attitudes and intentions of the individuals of the group. However, there are some unwanted consequences, like there are some mysterious forces, some spirit that animates the parts of the group. And this kind of consequences, of course, are to be avoided. How do they avoid this kind of consequences? Well, adopting methodological individualism. By methodological individualism, they understand the following. As the agency of individual human beings depends wholly on the configuration and functioning of biological subsystems, so the agency of group agents depends wholly on the organization and behavior of individual members. So their stance on group agency is that we should have a non-reductive realism, that is, we cannot explain group agency in terms of individual agency, but we have to have a methodological individualism, that we should reject any kind of mysterious force that animates the group. Okay, they also have an informative approach. They also have an informative criteria. That is, that groups displaying agency must have representational states, motivational states, and the group can also act in order to make the world fit with its desires. The basic idea is that the group must display some sort of rationality in order to count as a rational agent. So here I should mention something, namely that not all groups are group agents. In order to institutions are group agents, but mere collectivities are not group agents. Neither are, for example, if me and Paula try to move the table and we do this together, we have a collective action, but it doesn't mean that there's a group agent emerging from the agency, from our individual agency. Now, I would like to go back to the easy approach to ontology and to the questions regarding group agency and see whether there is something to get from it. So The basic idea is that if we have an easy approach to ontology, we should have a straightforward answer whether there are group agents or whether we can talk about group agency. So that means we should get rid of some metaphysical approaches like reductive realism, in which we accept group agency, but on the other hand, we should understand it in terms of individual agency. So maybe we can have just some informative criteria like displaying rationality, and this is the only criteria we can use in order to answer whether there are group agents or not. Also, methodological individualism becomes superfluous because we need to postulate those kind of mysterious entities only within the old ontological framework, within the pseudo-quine ontological framework in which we have rival ontologies, in which we have some ontological standards a theory has to fulfill. Okay, the problem is that if we accept the easy approach to ontology, we may also have to accept that some sort of group agents we actually wouldn't want. For example, we have to accept that every time more than two persons act, there's a group agent emerging from the individual agents acting. Okay, maybe we can accept group agency, and maybe we can accept that there's some group agent that emerges from the sum of individual agents. But in this case, we have to give up informative and substantive criteria like those proposed by List and Petit, namely that groups have to display rationality. Now, this approach to ontology is very useful to answer questions regarding the existence of social groups. So Thomason argues in her Ontology Made Easy and the Ontology of Social Groups that we have an easy answer regarding the existence of social groups. And we have an easy answer because institutional terms, for example, typically come with an application condition, enabling us to say, for example, that if such and such paperwork is filled and the relevant fee is paid, the corporation comes to exist and corporation comes to refer. Well, so we have an easy answer to the existence of social groups, but does it mean that we have an easy answer regarding the existing questions regarding the agency of institutions or other social groups? Does this mean that we can equally provide, provide an equally easy answer regarding group agency? Okay, so these are the possible consequences of easy ontology. So if we provide an easy answer regarding the existence of social group, does it trivially follows that group agents exist as well? Well, if it trivially follows that there are group agents, then we must also accept collective intentionality. And now it becomes difficult because maybe accepting group agency and collective intentionality would imply that we must also have some sort of a collective mind. And this would be a problematic postulation. So the last problem would be that the acceptance of group agency seems to be linked with group minds. Okay, so the basic ideas I tried to follow in this presentation were whether the easy ontology provides an easy answer whether there are group agents, or at least does it simplify our debate or debates regarding group agency? And is this framework better equipped to provide a straightforward answer? Okay, so this is, I thought it would take longer, but so this is what I had to say. Putem să trecem la întrebări. Întrebările mă gândeam